Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special discussion episode. As you may have, I hopefully remember from last time, we are on a brief hiatus from the main campaign while people take care of some life stuff. We will be back before you even know it. Our next main episode of the Gilded City will be coming out, barring any complications, on October 25th. So you don't have to wait too terribly long for the next main episode. But in the meantime, we thought it would be cool to get together, have a little discussion about the season so far, talk about what we liked, talk about different moments, ask each other questions, all that good stuff. I will go ahead and say right out the gate that anybody that wants to avoid answering a question can say, I'd rather, just let that come out in game later, because we obviously don't want to spoil anything. I very well may have to pull some of that because I, as the Dungeon Master, obviously know quite a bit of things that you should not know yet.
Boo.
Well, that's how it is. So don't forget, of course, to show us support. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel, follow the podcast, all that good stuff. And follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Rollers Guild DND. And keep an eye out for other content that we'll have on the channel in the interim between now and the next main episode. But I think this would be a great time to just go ahead and get started with our discussion. And I will kick us off with a question actually from Zuzu. Zuzu sent me the questions that she wanted to ask, even though she couldn't be here with us tonight. So Zuzu's first question is for everyone. I think this is a fantastic question. How has your character surprised you since the start of the campaign? Did they go in a different direction than you initially planned, made a choice you weren't expecting, so on and so forth?
Of course, the English major comes up with good analytical questions.
This feels like a test.
It's think ways they surprised us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
I actually do know Zuzu's answer to this question, not because she texted me a specific answer to it, but because we've had this conversation before. Of course, Zuzu, if I answer this inaccurately, please feel free to correct me in the comments.
She'll unsubscribe.
But Zuzu was telling me that she was sort of surprised that Penny became as standoffish and reluctant to bond with the other members of the party as she did. That was not necessarily her plan at the outset, but that was sort of based on the attributes she gave the character. That's sort of what made sense for Penny, right? She was a very anxious person. So the idea of doing all these illegal things with these other people has made her come off as a little bit standoffish with the rest of the group. So that's something that Zuzu said she was a little bit surprised in, because she was initially planning on Penny being a little bit more open and a little bit more like a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, young go-getter reporter as opposed to just an anxious person.
I could see that. Oh yeah, go.
I feel like when I originally made Janara, Janara is a way of the drunken master.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think I thought she was going to not be so serious of a character and sort of, spend her time at the bar with Sanctuary, or not Sanctuary. Sanctuary. And just, not care. And I think originally I didn't want her to really like people so much. I think I sort of viewed her as sort of like a jaded party girl in a way, whose parents kind of dropped the city in her lap and then left. And I feel like I find myself rising to the occasion the more I play her.
Mhm.
And I kind of like the direction I've taken her much more than the way I originally intended to play her.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. For Artemis, Artemis is a character that I have planned out way too much. Like I don't know how many conversations I've had with Ben about when I would be multiclassing, but I've known I'm gonna do it since making the character. And we can go into that later. Surprise
I do have a
in
question
that.
related to that, also from Zuzu. Funny.
Oh sure.
But continue.
Like surprises, I'm surprised how quickly Artemis has learned stuff. Because and I think now and then I kind of intentionally reel him back and say, I don't think you actually do understand the world as much, because it's been a weird challenge of like Artemis doesn't get the world and how it functions and how it works, because everyone who would have told him that knew that he was basically the prince who could say at any point, I want you dead, and it could just happen, right? So he didn't actually get a real perception of the world whatsoever, but he thinks he did. So there's been this weird contrast between me playing him and knowing how things are gonna go down versus his reality. And sometimes I get the two mixed up just as a player. But I think I'm a little surprised how quickly he's picked some things up. Just because he is still such an idiot rich boy. He doesn't get a damn thing. But yeah, I've been surprised at his growth, I guess. How quickly he's I think it was kind of his brother showing up, but how quickly he said, okay, like the world is real, people I know actually can die, and like understanding consequences more.
Nice.
I don't know if there's anything that has surprised me hugely about Nyx. There are definitely things that I thought were going to come up more, but just in terms of like where the story's gone or whether or not I remember to mention things or emphasize things, it's just like, I don't know. I figured that Nyx was going to be more annoying about like voting rights, but I haven't real like, it just doesn't fit in. Like, she understands that she doesn't need to talk about it all the time, and that she's working towards a different issue at the moment. But I guess she's branching out more than I thought she would in terms of like who she spends her time with, because she was very connected to her family and didn't really, like in the backstory, she didn't really go out and do too much beyond the equal participation stuff. She went to work, she came home, helped her parents. So I guess it's just like she's still not that friendly, but she's a little bit more friendly than I thought she was going to be.
Yeah, see, I think with Octavia, she's kind of less friendly than I had first anticipated for her. That like originally I thought she was going to be kind of like more of a socialite type, knows everybody, kind of just like into everything, and everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, we know Octavia, but like it doesn't necessarily fit as well as I thought it would. So I guess that was a little bit surprising that she's not as popular as I had initially like planned on.
It's always fun to see how, because I mean every single character you come up with, right? You're like, this is who I think it'll be, and then I'll find out, and then you actually get into the game and you go, nope, 180 in the other direction almost every time.
Because you also don't know where the story points are going to go, and like if your backstory is even going to be that relevant to where, like, what's happening, and you decide whether or not you want to play up certain things. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And I mean, certainly, you know, there's always, as the DM, there's always somewhere in the back of my head churning, where do I connect backstory elements in? How do I tie certain details in and integrate them with the world and the story and where the story is developing and all that stuff. And so I've tried to do a fairly good balancing act as far as that's concerned. I think at this point in the campaign, some characters' backstories have had more chances to shine than others. I am hoping that by the end of the campaign, I will have brought that to more of a balanced place where every character will have had roughly equal time in the spotlight, but it's of course always a difficult balancing act to get everything lined up well.
definitely.
Thanks, Zuzu.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Zuzu.
Yeah, thanks, Zuzu.
Thanks for kicking us off.
We'll return to more of your questions as we go, Zuzu, because
Zuzu will be right back.
yeah, Zuzu will be right back. Great. Well, did anybody have a question they wanted to go with next, or I can always give us a topic to continue on the conversation with.
I have one for you, Ben.
Sure.
So obviously you do a lot of planning and you have to do that week to week, but so far has this gone even remotely close to the direction that you had initially anticipated?
Yes. Remarkably, this is more or less along the lines of where I was anticipating it going. There were a couple of points where it could have really gone off the rails, and I would have had to do a lot of work to figure out what the new direction for the campaign is, right? And I don't mean to say off the rails in terms of like you're on a track,
Right.
but more in just terms of like, if there are a couple choice points where if y'all had made a choice that I was not expecting you to make, there would have been a lot of work for me to do to get it to continue the campaign. I think the earliest one, and it was a big gamble on my part because if the answer had been no, the entire campaign would have been totally different. The earliest point was after the break-in to Gerald Wilmington's house, when Freedom came to you and asked you to look into Ovina Bloodkeith. If you all had said no, the whole plan I had for the campaign was out the window, and I'd have to make up something entirely new. Basically the entirety of what you've been doing since then has kind of relied on Freedom. She's been your kind of you're the person who's sort of like, okay, here's your next job, and if you all had decided to turn down her offer, then I would have had to come up with something totally different. And I had some loose ideas on what I could have done instead of that. Possibly exploring more criminal things, possibly going down into some watchful order stuff more quickly, possibly with rich people trying to hire you all that stuff. I had so many different like floating possibilities of where it could have gone if you said no, but they were all just like very loose ideas that I wasn't sure. And I was basically like, well, I think they'll say yes to Freedom.
I think they'll get that this was my plan.
This is the thing, yeah.
But if you all had said no, obviously I would have honored that decision and we would have done something different. But if you all had said no, that would have very early on been like, okay, I guess the campaign is completely different now than I was expecting. And then there were a couple points where there were certain combat encounters. If you had lost, again, would have been a lot of me trying to do figure out like how we move forward from here. There are very specifically a couple combat encounters where if you had all dropped, you would not have all died because the people were more interested in capturing you than killing you.
Sure.
And so that could have been a very fun circumstance there. But certainly I think the biggest moment that it almost completely went in a different direction than I was expecting was that decision with Freedom. But you made the choice I thought you would probably have made. And for the most part, things have gone kind of the way I expected. I mean, you've in like small ways, you certainly made decisions that I wasn't expecting. Like you took more time than I was expecting to prepare for the Bloodkeith heist, and you took way less time than I was expecting to prepare for the Maraval mansion.
Sure did.
Thing.
I think that was us as players the first time being like, ooh, how are we gonna do this? Do we know how to, let's prepare for everything?
Right.
And the next time being like, no, we're not doing that again. Let's
Right.
just
Hit the
fucking wing
button.
it.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, luckily, like whenever you set out for your, for each of those targets, like I kind of had an idea of where you could get information, what different pieces of the puzzle could be involved with that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So even though you robbed Maravaldi's mansion quicker than I was expecting, I knew what was in Maravaldi's mansion already. It was just, so to answer your question in a much longer way, than necessary. You've mostly, surprisingly, in some cases, I played D&D with some of you before, and I know how quickly things can go crazy. But no, you've mostly done what I sort of expected and what I sort of planned for. Which has been nice because I was really excited about a lot of the ideas that I had for the campaign, and I think it's been going very well so far.
So jumping off that question, did you expect us to pick Maravaldi? Like, did you have an idea of which of the like
Ooh.
big main
yeah.
people we were gonna
Do
pick?
you have an order? Dragon first.
No. So
You don't have to tell us who you thought we'd go for first.
I think there were maybe 2 people that I thought you would pick next after Bloodkeith, right? I knew Bloodkeith was going to be the first one because that was the only person you had a lead on.
Right.
And Freedom was like, the only way you're going to find another lead is if we go after Bloodkeith. And then I thought Maravaldi was a very real possibility as the next target because of what had been happening with Penny in the lead up to that. With her house getting foreclosed on. So that was, I think Maravaldi was the one I was most expecting because he was the one that was most involved in stuff that was going on. But I wouldn't have been surprised if you all had chosen a different person as this second target. But I did try to be very forward with you in game that it was not a good idea to go after Fear Kindler.
Really?
Don't do the dragon first.
Man.
But no, I mean, I thought Maravaldi was probably the most likely candidate for the second option, but I didn't know for sure. And I sort of had a loose idea of what illegal things each of the other candidates was doing, but I wasn't going to thoroughly plan out what their deal was until you had chosen the next target, only because that is wasted prep time. You know what I mean? Like I have in my head, here's what all of them are doing illegally, but I don't necessarily have the breakdown of, okay, here's the floor plans for the places they're going to go into. Here's the monster encounters, blah, 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 blah. I don't have all of that prepped out in advance. I have, here's the basic idea of what each of these criminals is doing. And when that criminal becomes the next target, then I flesh out the details a little more.
That makes sense. Because I assume that we'll be at, like, we just leveled up. So the next person we go after will have to be slightly more difficult than more of all these stuff.
Right.
And so on and so forth.
I will say one thing that surprised me. For the most part, the balance of the combat encounters has been about what I thought it was going to be. But that Marivaldi combat encounter was way easier for y'all than numbers said it should have been. And I know in my head, right, the breakdown of challenge rating and of encounter difficulty is a finicky thing and it has a lot of wiggle room, but that wiggle room skewed way more in the easy direction than I was expecting it to. But it was okay because I had a more difficult combat encounter already planned in.
So how many people got poisoned by the rock?
I think it was only Nyx.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Everybody else
only
is-
Nyx, and then like Bowman just came in because he has the ability to be able to deal so much damage so quickly.
Yeah. No, paladins are an incredible class, especially at this point in the game.
Yeah.
Right. I think paladins are one of the classes where their most powerful ability comes online pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so they are good the entire game, but they are especially powerful, I think, in this like mid-level range of like between that like 3 to like 7 or 8, I think is when paladins like are at their peak of much more powerful than the other classes. I think it balances out in the end, but
Yeah. In that kind of vein, I'm curious about everyone else, just in general, about each of your characters. Were there any in kind of building them initially for their design? Was there any inspiration going into it? Like, oh, I want to play this type of character, or oh, I want to play this class of character. That I'm curious, like where people started out, and when Ben was like, "Hey, want to play a game?" That's my Ben voice.
so it's uncanny how
Spot on.
accurate it was.
Well, this is the third like fully fleshed character that I've made like to play, and the first one I did was a druid. Then I've been playing a rogue the longest. So I wanted to do something with the magic because like I've liked that aspect. So I was like, wizard sounds cool, and like I've been watching Critical Role. Yeah. So I was like loving Liam's character, and like that
Caleb
seems like a fun time. So we love Caleb.
Matt, Kelly, and I are going to be silent because we know all the
Yes.
stories.
Yep.
But,
Yes.
Don't say it.
We're
I
just
have
gonna
no-
smile
Caleb
at
is
it.
great.
So
The
good.
whole campaign.
So
For
good.
sure.
Wizards are so fun because they can be customized into whatever you want them to be.
Yeah,
It's
and
really fun.
I don't know. I wasn't totally sure where I was gonna go with it. And then Kelly actually helped me a little bit with like the backstory and like creating Octavia as like a reporter. So then from there I was like, well, how do I use the magic to help that piece of her life? So like my initial spells were all kind of like, how would she use this in like an investigative scenario?
Mm. That's fun.
It's a cool
One
twist.
thing I have to say is one of my absolute favorite things with Octavia, which I think you said to me when we did our backstory Zoom call, was the camera as the spellcasting focus. That is one of my absolute
So fun.
favorite things
Yeah.
about Octavia. Because I think you asked me if you could do that. I was like, that sounds so cool. Of course.
Yeah. Well, because like I know not like actual history, but it's like cameras weren't really invented yet in the time frame, but like
You're in
There are
about
also
the right
dragons
time.
and
Right.
devils and
Well,
things running around.
I mean,
so.
magic is
So-
real, so like maybe technology developed a little bit more with it.
Yeah,
Plus it's
so
not a
there
real
is-
camera.
In terms of the time period, there is
There were cameras.
there were certainly cameras, but there's sort of like a roughly 20-year period of time where I'm drawing aspects from that whole stretch, and then little details from even a little bit outside of that from like our real world history. So the actual, like, if we were to put this in the real world, the time period would be like 1890-ish. But
Kodak was founded in 1892, so
so
Right.
there you go.
But that's
personal
still
cameras would
Came out
a
theoretically
little bit
be,
after that. Yeah.
um at any rate, I thought it was very cool. So who else has inspirations for their characters they want to share?
I mean, I have studied this time period as a historian and was like, there's a lot of like cool movements happening during the Gilded Age. Like it's the Gilded Age, but also the Progressive Era at the same time. And like the women's suffrage movement always interested me in like throughout my life. And I was like, well, okay, so Ben says that there's no like specific gender or like race that is being denied voting rights or opportunities, but the poor aren't as like don't have access to this stuff. So I was like, okay, great, that's something that like I thought bringing an activist to the situation would be interesting. They would like Nyx is very much into this, let's take down the evil rich people because they're terrible whole situation we've got going on. And so I just took like I made up a background of activist. So I just like I also wanted to play a rogue, and I was like, I guess this kind of works since you kind of have to like be able to get information, and you might want to sneak in and like cause some trouble to get your story out or get people talking about something.
Yeah.
So I thought that
And
would work out well.
in terms of that dynamic of the main dynamic of oppression in the setting being economic, that was a very intentional choice on my part, because there's so many different dynamics of oppression that exist in our real world, and trying to find one that I felt we as a group would be able to speak to was specifically a goal of mine. And that is why the economic aspect is sort of the aspect I sort of chose to focus on. And also playing into also the whole thing of in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, there hasn't seemed to have been much there, like at least in 5th edition and previous editions is different probably, but in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, there's no like difference between the gender that your adventurer is, right? That doesn't really play any impact on your adventurer's capabilities and what they're doing. While every race in the game gets different base stats, it doesn't necessarily change your effectiveness as an adventurer. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, if it's a world where magic and monsters are real and there's these heroes that are capable of great feats, how much sense does it make for a culture to develop this idea of genderized oppression or racialized oppression that didn't, that as a dynamic of oppression, I think there's so many weirder things in the world of Dungeons and Dragons that the idea that a woman could wield a sword just as well as a man maybe is not such an outlandish thing to most of the people in the world. But the idea of economic oppression, I think, already exists in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. There's already
There's mechanics built for it.
there's already mechanics built for it. There's already kingdoms and kings and nobles and rich merchants and so on and so forth. So I think fleshing that out made more sense to me in universe than trying to flesh out some of those other dynamics. And I also felt, again, a little bit more comfortable with in terms of what I know about both from study and personal experience, being able to speak to that aspect as well. So,
Right.
Cool.
For Janara, I think monks are really cool. I tried to put a lot of thought. I sort of figured out what I wanted my backstory to be before I built my character. And I really think it's interesting in like superhero movies and stuff when someone who doesn't have a superpower is like this superhero just because they've taken so much time to train. And I feel like monks, even more than fighters, like sort of showcase that. Like they've trained so much that they've developed this key ability. And I kind of think that's really, really cool. I really debated for a long time whether or not I even wanted to have Janara multi-class because I kind of liked that she didn't have any magic to her and she just like actually worked super hard to just try to like keep the city as safe as she could without any like powers that she had. But then I feel like if Janara could have some healing to her, that would just sort of like round out exactly what I wanted her to be able to be.
Yeah, actually like heal the city.
Yeah. So yeah.
Nice.
That's fun.
How about Artemis, Matt? Oh, well, just to speak to, since I've spoken on things both related to Octavia and Nyx, to speak to Janara's backstory when we were first talking. Yeah, Eva sort of came to me with the idea of her parents being like famous adventurers. And, that got me thinking, like, because, sort of as I envisioned the world, adventurers aren't very common anymore in the modern age because of all the developments and stuff. But I was like, yeah, okay, so if there are these famous adventurer parents that exist, like obviously they're going to be well known because there's not many of them left. So then like developing in my head who Janara's parents were, what they had done, I think was both very interesting for me, and I really loved the Last Adventurers one shot because that we did.
That was great.
Because it was really, really cool to spend some time with these seasoned heroes, right?
Yeah.
But also just thinking about their place in the world, how they fit in with everything. Who are they famous to? And what sorts of things are they involved in? And all that stuff. I think that was a very fun part of the world building for me. And there are certainly details that I thought of how that whole puzzle fits in that haven't come up yet. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that was I think one of my favorite things about developing the world as it connected to Janara's backstory, was developing the idea of who the Last Adventurers were. That's the name I like. Eva didn't come to me with like, I want their adventuring party to be named this. She was just like, I think they're adventurers. And so when I was trying to figure out what their adventuring party was named, I was like, like the last adventurers felt right, not because they actually are the last adventurers in the world, but that does seem like the name a group of adventurers who exist in a world where there's not many adventurers would call themselves, right? You know, it has sort of a grandiose nature to it, and feeds into sort of the legend of the group. So I had a blast coming up with that, and I'm really, really glad that some of the ideas about that came out. And also, for the record, if you've watched the one shot, everybody's character was their creation. I didn't sit down and say you have to play these characters, because I left the other party members of the Last Adventurers like vague. Like I never sat down and came up with these are all the members of the Last Adventurers. I had a loose idea of what the group as a whole had done, but I didn't have anything specific about individual members. So it was really, that was another really fun thing, was when everybody sat down to create their characters for the one shot, seeing what they came up with and sort of adding that into the growing backstory and legend of those characters. That was really, really fun for me.
I think one of the most interesting things about our campaign as a whole is the fact that adventurers aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
Because the entire idea of playing Dungeons and Dragons is to be the big damn heroes that go kill the monsters, right? All the mechanics are built around that. And then there are other ways to flesh out and explore context around that. But the game is designed to go kill the monsters. And so having a world where people don't do that anymore
Yeah.
automatically puts this weird contrast in place.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Eva,
I
did
think
you?
Shannara could have gone a totally different way based on whether or not her parents were alive too, because I left that completely up to you.
Mhm.
I didn't know if they
Yeah.
were. I didn't know if they were going to be warm to me when I did meet them. I didn't, I had no idea, and I feel like that really could have shifted the way I play my character.
Yeah, I think I was trying to, when we did that one shot, I sort of knew that Janara in particular felt very much like she'd been abandoned by her parents. And I think when I was developing your parents, I was trying to come up with like, is it something that they've intentionally done, or is it they are just not good at this, right? Not good at that balance. And I that's ultimately I think what I landed on when I was developing your parents, was just they're just not good at being parents. It's not from lack of care, that like it's not that they don't love Janara, it's just they are really bad at showing it, and they are really bad at being present. Again, if you haven't watched that one shot, this hiatus between last episode and next episode,
Pop it on real quick.
Perfect time to go watch it. I think it was a lot of fun. Get to see some higher level play, level
Which
13,
was very fun.
I believe, which was very fun to do. So if you haven't already, go check it out.
I do have a question about that one shot that we can get to later. Don't let me forget.
Okay, great. So Matt, what about you for inspiration for Artemis and whatnot?
Artemis is this idea that I've been bouncing around since right after building my first character ever. Once I was like, okay, so that's how you build a character. This is, what do I do now? Then I started working on this Artemis idea, and it's been this long there have been a couple like little play tests to see what I want. But he's this weird amalgamation of different ideas. That first, the lore bard is, I think, my favorite class and subclass of the entire game, simply because it's so customizable to whatever you need or want it to be. I like that flexibility, but Artemis is based mainly off of Shakespeare's Henry IV Part 1, Prince Hal, of the princely boy who doesn't want or doesn't care about the responsibilities he's supposed to do, and hangs out with the common folk as a kind of screw you to the family, but also that's what he wants. And then I presumed that somewhere along the way he would begin to learn that that isn't going to work with the family and relationship that he has. And so his backstory, I was not expecting to meet his brother ever at all in this story. So that was surprising to Artemis and surprising to me, because I built his entire family backstory is based on being a bard. It is based on this one random song that I like by a Finnish symphonic metal band called Nightwish. It's just a random song that they have, and it inspired me to think about this. And I won't go into too much about what it is, because a lot of it's going to get explained probably in the next episode in game. But there's
Some
a
of
huge
it may,
backstory.
and some of it may be potential season 2 stuff.
Yeah, so I gotta
We do a season
I
2.
gotta be careful. But there is this. His family is this long lineage of forgotten responsibility that they've been trying to claw their way back. Artemis didn't like having that responsibility on his shoulders, so he ran away to the taverns. And as of the break's last episode, has finally, because being inspired by seeing what Janara does, and the selfless devotion to her city and how much she cares, and like Waterdeep is not his city, right? He's here running away from his responsibility and treating this like a vacation. But seeing that these people that he's become close with care about this city made him start to care about it. And then in some of these situations where things got real bad was when he decided, maybe it's time, because I have access to this thing I know about, to open that door again after he'd closed it for so long. But yeah, Artemis is this weird combination of screwed up little rich boy who learns how to actually be a decent person.
Yeah, to speak to Artemis, I think out of all of you, Matt is the one who gave me the most detailed backstory.
It's uncomfortably detailed. And I gave it knowing straight up, being like, oh, we're never gonna explore this, but this is who he is.
Yeah, so he gave me like a really long and very interesting backstory. I'm not going to go into the details of, because some of it will certainly come out with his brother being in town, and pieces of it that don't come up before the end of this campaign. I want to leave the door open to explore some of those things in a potential second season, should we all decide that we want to keep doing that. Playing these characters. But the backstory that Matt handed me, it was so detailed that it was one of those things where I was like, I want what he has given me to for sure be canon. So how do I mold the world around it to make it fit in? Which is always one of those things, fun things as a DM is figuring out. And I think if we were playing in an entirely original setting, it would have been easier actually to fit all of it in. But because we're playing in Faerun, I liked it almost. I liked the challenge of making it make sense in the established lore of the world. To my knowledge of the established lore of the world, I want to be very clear that I am not the world's foremost expert on the lore of Faerun.
Not a Faerun historian.
But trying to make it fit in with the lore of the world as I understand it was a very fun exercise for me. I really genuinely very thoroughly enjoyed it, trying to be vague with and I look forward to someday exploring how some of these details work in this world, whether that be now or much later. Great. Why don't we toss it over to our very first Terry Talks segment.
Terry talks.
So, Matt, would you care to explain what Terry Talks is?
Yeah. So Terry is my mother. Terry has never played Dungeons and Dragons. Doesn't know a thing about it, except she's a huge fan of the show. Hi, Mom.
Shout out to you, Terry.
Shout
You're
out
great.
to you, Terry. And regularly after finishing an episode, I will either get a series of texts or a call saying just finished it as some reaction. But half the time there are these great questions that come out. Being someone who's totally unfamiliar with how the game is created, how to play how a 20-sided dice works, just asking all these various questions that I then started lovingly calling my Terry Talks. And so I would send it to the rest of the group in our chat and be like, here's another Terry Talk, blah, 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 or ask another question. So it'll be a fun little thing to ask it in a more formalized
Yes. Our
setting.
formal-
Us, this, so formal. Let me scroll to my Terry Talk questions. There is one for you, Ben, that we touched on we started poking at earlier.
Okay.
And that's with how much of our heists and our break-ins that we have. And you said you kind of had an idea and you got an idea on which ones we were going to touch next.
Mhm.
But how much of like Maravaldi's mansion or the Bloodkeith like factory do you actually have planned out? And how much time do you spend sitting on that?
Yeah.
Because is it an idea of you actually have a map in front of you in your style, or is it you kind of are creating it with loose ideas as we go through it?
So it depends on how close we get to each thing, right? The farther away we are from a thing, the looser it is. But as we get closer, I start formalizing designs. Maravaldi's mansion, to speak to that, the layout of his mansion is heavily based, with only some very minor alterations on my end, heavily based on the floor plan of Monticello, which, for those of you who don't know, was Thomas Jefferson's mansion. Now, the reason for that is Thomas Jefferson was a huge, rich asshole, and so I thought it was appropriate that Maravaldi lived in a house based on a famous rich asshole's house. Sorry, Jefferson fans, I think he was just awful. Maravaldi's house, mansion, and that was something I came up with maybe 2 weeks before you guys did the break-in to his house. I came up with that idea. And then I have a map for the section of the Undermountain that the cult used for the maze. But that map was something I randomly generated on the website Dungeon. Shout out to that website.
Oh, nice. So you didn't actually have to create a labyrinth.
I didn't create the labyrinth from scratch.
Okay.
No, that was something that I knew I wanted it to be large and sprawling and fleshed out. But I didn't want to rip the map straight from the Dungeon of the Mad Mage adventure, not because the maps in that adventure are bad, they're very good, but because I wanted to do something different, a little bit more unique. And so I got down to the point where I was trying to decide if I was going to make that from scratch or if I was going to randomly generate it. And just with time being what it is, randomly generating it ended up making so much more sense than trying to design a giant labyrinth all from scratch.
For sure.
So I probably ran the random generation on Dungeon probably like honestly only a few days before you broke into Maribaldi's house. And it was possible that you all could have ended up in it.
Do you have like a favorite style? Like, do you prefer kind of finding out what comes out of your mouth as we explore something, or do you find that you rather like having things planned out?
I like having at least an outline of a plan. I feel if I have no clue on where something is going, totally making it up on the spot is stressful for me. I think the times that I've had to do it, both in this campaign and in other campaigns, it's worked out. But certainly I like having enough that I have a foundation upon which to improvise and go off in different directions when the party inevitably does something I'm not expecting. But to go back to the question of how much is planned out in advance, it's, again, it depends, but sort of the farther away from something we are, the looser it's planned. I do a lot, like before I even get to the part where I'm typing up any of my notes, I am just like thinking about it, right? When I'm walking or driving or, so on and so forth. Have spare time where I'm not super busy focused on something else. When my mind wanders, it often wanders to me thinking about things that are coming up in the campaign. And usually those things I'm thinking about are things that are pretty far down the line. And then as we get closer to those things, I go back to what I was thinking about, like, okay, so how do we actually make this idea I have in my head, what does that look like in practical reality? And so I start typing up notes. And so usually for like each target that you have, the first thing I type up is an overview of just the whole thing with the target. And then once I have that, when that target becomes more important, then it goes into breaking down the different pieces of the overview of how do these different pieces fit in, and those different pieces are going to be different depending on the person. To give you actual examples from my notes, for Bloodkeith, I've got a section all about how the party could have found out about building security and what information about building security was where. I had general building staff information. I had floor plan, how the party could get the floor plan, but I didn't actually have the floor plan like fully fleshed out until you went and got the floor plan. And then when you did, that's when I fleshed out the floor plan more. I made some basic notes about what was in the area around the office building. And then there was an individual whole separate tab on these are the illegal things that Ovina Bloodkeith was up to. This is how they could find out about it. But funny enough, one thing I wasn't necessarily expecting was Brian in the Ovina arc, right? I wasn't totally expecting this random security guard that I made up a name for on the on the spot.
We all got very mad about it.
That everybody got mad about. I was not expecting him to end up being as important as he was, but I already had the notes for what general security guards know about this building security. So going off of bouncing off of that worked out. And then I had notes on what would happen when you broke in, what the different and how the different security measures changed, and then I had notes on the conclusion of the arc and how that conclusion, the different ways that conclusion could have gone. So I do flesh out my notes quite a bit when we start getting closer to things.
Sure.
But mostly I don't typically sit down and say, and then so and so will say this if they say this. I don't do that, obviously, because that would be a nightmare. But just a couple of short paragraphs or bullet points or whatever with here's kind of the overview of this particular aspect. So it sort of starts as broad and then it gets a little bit more narrow, but with enough wiggle room once we get close. And then when an actual break-in happens, when it's very clear that a break-in to a location is imminent, that's when maps get made. Okay.
Cool. That's fun to kind of know your process. Thank you, Ben. And thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Terry.
Thank
this
you,
has been
Terry.
a Terry Talk.
Grab another Zuzu one.
Yeah.
Gosh,
we
yeah.
could do another
You said Zuzu sent in a
question.
bunch?
She
She
did
had
send
a
in
very-
a bunch.
She had a very good one for the first one. I'm
She
just
did, she
expecting
did.
the rest of them.
Yeah,
are
it better be
same
equal or higher
level.
caliber.
Yeah.
So here's another question for everyone. In your opinion, who has been the most dangerous person the party has encountered?
Oh.
And who would your character think is the most dangerous person? So you as a player, who's the most dangerous person we've encountered? And as a character, who do you think the most dangerous person you've encountered is?
Can I say I think it's the same person for Octavia? I think it's her mom.
Sure.
Yeah.
If
Well,
I
that's scary
rolled
as shit.
if I rolled a better on those D6s, that encounter could have been much more dangerous than it.
Yes.
I mean, it was still
Fast.
a tricky encounter, which I'm glad it was, but it could have been much worse.
If Bowman didn't have relenting endurance, I think there was a point we would have had 3 of us down at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
It's no good.
I agree.
She was dangerous.
Yeah.
Huh.
I would say it's probably a tie between Octavia's mom and Mordai, just because, for me personally, because I'm I don't trust it. Any deal that we would have made with that devil would have backfired on us.
He's
in a
still out there.
dangerous
I was
way.
still into
We are
it.
not done with him.
Yeah, no. And then I think that Nyx just thinks that anyone who has too much power and influence and is not letting people vote is dangerous. I don't think she has I don't think she has a top 10. I think they're just all evil in her eyes.
Yeah. Oh, who does Artie think? Okay. We'll start with who do I think is the most dangerous? Yeah, man, the mind flayers are so, if there are, we've only seen tadpoles, but man, mind flayers are so scary.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a powerful wizard with a mind flayer. That Davia's mom is intimidating as hell. The fact that she can send out that much, those psionic blasts, to just do a little bit of damage on almost everyone and chip away.
Yeah.
And then she can it's either Misty Step or she has some rogue things that she can just get away.
She has the rogue ability cunning action.
Oh
Yeah.
man, so she can stay far away and do this stuff. She's
Yeah.
dangerous. I bet she's got. Does she have counterspell? I don't remember.
Shouldn't use it.
She didn't
We
use
don't.
it.
We might not
I
know.
don't
But,
think we.
oh man.
I don't think we threw anything at her that was actual spells, though.
Yeah.
We did-
Not-
we did-
I don't think we
didn't
really did.
Or at least it didn't hit or do too much.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
she
Octavia,
succeeded on
Octavia
the-
was
on the
not
bane
going to
and-
throw anything at her because she was too freaked out. She was like, I
Right.
can't. She couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then of course Artemis is terrified of his brother. He thinks his brother is the most dangerous man to ever live.
Sure.
And on another, on kind of a flipping the coin over, Artemis thinks Bowman is incredibly dangerous. And that's part of the reason he keeps him so close.
Sure.
Because a lot of Artemis's thing is I need someone big to hide behind. I need someone tough to hide behind, and if I can keep this character, this Bowman guy, close to me, then nothing's gonna get through and touch me. I can play my little games in the background. I can crack jokes and make these jabs, and if somebody comes at me, I go, no, you have to get through him first. And just like flip them off.
A tale as old
Um,
as time.
Yeah. So on like a different side of it, like Artemis doesn't think he is in danger from Bowman, quite opposite, but he thinks Bowman is incredibly dangerous because he's shown this moral ambiguity.
Mhm.
Unlike, oh, it's a person, I'll kill them. That now and then is just this ooh moment. And every time Artemis is like poked a little bit to be like, hey, I think I know where you're from. I think I might know some of your deal. Talk to me. There's just a wall that goes up. Right? So that's
Mhm.
a little like concerning, but not enough to actually. Like half the reason that Artemis has kept the suggestion spell around is in case something snaps and he needs to try and stop Bowman from attacking him.
Interesting.
That would be a very interesting turn of events.
That would
Yeah.
be.
Terrifying. Those smites coming at us. We're done. So,
Yeah.
I just poof into a different plane of existence, see if I can.
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Next up then, unless anybody else has a question they'd like to share before I ask something else.
I got a
Speaking-
bunch, but sure.
Speaking of Octavia's mother, I mean, I think we can kind of all guess Octavia's mental state at the moment is not the best. But
No.
did Octavia, do you know, like, have you thought about if Octavia had any kind of gut feeling that her mom was out there? Like, because Octavia grew up thinking that her mom was dead, right?
No.
Oh, no. Okay. Just up. She was
No.
up for adoption. Okay.
Not even that. So Octavia knows she was left on the doorstep of the newspaper when she was pretty young, not a baby, but pretty young. I don't know if I want to say this or not.
You don't have to.
don't have to.
It's not gonna hurt anything. She thought she was left because her mother was not able to take care of her.
Gotcha. I mean, technically, that's
that
true.
was her thought, was just, oh, like she just couldn't take care of me, like she just because of the innate magic ability too. It was also a question of, oh, like maybe she wasn't rich enough to afford magic training, but knew that I had that, didn't want me to get in trouble with the law, so gave me to somebody that could.
Sure.
That's interesting.
And as a quick sidebar, both for a point of clarification for y'all and a point of clarification for the audience, the way the Sword Coast's magic laws work is if you are a lineage that has innate magic abilities, which is often, elves are common one, but many of the lineages in D&D have innate magical abilities. If you have those innate magical abilities just as part of your lineage, your options are you can pay for a magic license or you can just not use them. And that's the choice. So like technically you can be like a changeling without a magic license. Like there's nothing illegal about being a changeling without a magic license. You just can't.
Better not change.
You just can't change. You better just stay. You better pick a form, and that's the form you're going to stay in. So
This regulated magic is
Oh, it's wild.
ooh, it's big. It in designing the wizard I played for the last adventurers, it never came up, but his entire thing of why he became an adventurer is a big old fuck the government. Nobody can regulate magic. That's inhumane. That's unnatural.
and there are a variety of characters, some of whom you've met and learned this about, and somebody whom you haven't, who have various weird relationships with the magic laws, right? But anyway, continuing on with what you were saying, Kira, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, that's kind of covers it.
yeah.
I think.
I'm curious what does Octavia like? Maybe a quick like popcorn going around, like going into after the break. What do they want? What do each of our characters want next?
Ooh.
What does Octavia want next?
I think
Or does she know? Yeah.
I don't know if she knows. Because right now, she's had a lot of things thrown at her in the past couple days that she was not expecting at all. That kind of threw off her whole perception of who she is, even.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think she knows. I don't know. So that's probably part of it.
Sure.
What about Janara? What does Janara want?
I think Janara wants to protect the city, and I think part of that is making sure the people she's backing for office are actual honest people. And I think she's very weary of backing people because she doesn't trust Vinny, and Vinny was with, sketchy people. So, yeah.
Good. Good. I'm glad you didn't trust me.
There's no way in hell we would ever trust Vinny. Mr. Brightshield.
Love it.
No,
that's awesome though. That's good.
Does Nyx want anything other than voting rights?
Actually, now that I'm multi-classing into artificer, the reason why she is going in this direction is partially because of the job that she has now with Sanctuary. Is she wants to figure out if she can make things easier at the bar. Like, she has a little bit of magic already that she's just picked up from scraps and stuff and watching people. But she has this magic and she has this tinkering ability, and she just wants to see if she can make her job easier. But also, she saw Artemis with his silencer on his gun, and she was like, I have a gun. Maybe I can figure out a way to do this. And so she wants to figure out if she can make her weapons a little bit more powerful.
Potent. Yeah.
Yes. So
A fun fact that is separate of the game. Artemis is about to give you that pistol.
Oh,
he doesn't
cool.
need it anymore.
well, Nyx is gonna study the crap out of that thing, and it's
Yeah.
gonna get more.
Make another one.
Yeah, I don't need it.
But also, she's gonna, because she's realized that if she's up close, she has to be up close and personal to do a lot of her stuff. So she wants to see if she can take a little bit more of a distanced approach to getting involved and stuff.
That's funny because I think right now Artemis is kind of the opposite. Of he's been in the back. Remember our very first combat, he was worried about stepping into the sewage and how awful that was going to be for him. And now, what I think what he wants after the fight with Octavia's mom, where he was lying prone on the ground watching and kind of being like, there is nothing I can do. Even the things that I can do, it's not going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of this realization of being like, oh shit, like if I'm like people need me and I can't be there for them. And so in kind of taking this deal that his multi-classing into the warlock is, and I don't mind sharing, he has known about this deal offered to him since day one of his life. Is one of the pressures that his father was always saying, you have to do this, you have to serve this entity, that's what our family does. And knowing that it was always a door that could be opened, kind of probably consciously or subconsciously, then that door was open, and then Silver Flame was like, knock knock knock, you want to talk to me now? And so what he wants is the ability to kind of follow his family motto of stand in defense of those who cannot defend themselves. And in that moment, A, lying on the ground, B, unable to defend his friends, something had to shift. And so now he's thinking of ways where he can get up and be able to get up into combat, rush forward, and be a big damn hero. So
related to that, there is of course a reason why Artemis's first dream did not trigger until after Dagger showed up. Which is of course that door was closed, and the panic that Artemis went into, I think the entity saw as a good opening to try to get in there.
For sure.
And it has worked out the way that entity has wanted it to work out. Great. All right. For our next question, we had one response to the tweet asking for questions.
A fan. We love you, fan. Thank you.
Shout outs to you.
You're so great.
Katie, who asked for the players, what class would you pick for yourself? As in real life, what class would you be? Or what class would you want to be? She's unclear, so you could answer.
Oh, that's different. Okay, I'll answer both, I guess. Which one I think I am or which one I want to be?
Okay.
I think I am a ranger.
Okay.
I'm a ranger and I'm real upset about it.
Okay.
Why are you upset about it?
Because I just want to be something else. Because the ranger got the short end of the stick in 5th edition, and they tried to update it.
The worst class in 5th edition, like mechanically speaking. It's still really it can be really fun to role play if you're into that, but like in terms
all of its things are
sheer
built
mechanics,
around,
it's not.
All of its things are built around adventuring through the wilderness if your DM cares about food and water.
Yeah, basically.
And that is really boring, so nobody does that. So
don't worry.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, he
I'm
doesn't
a
So why
ranger.
do you think you are a ranger then?
I'm a ranger because as as an Eagle Scout, I know so much nature and wilderness survival. Growing up in West Virginia, I know so much nature and wilderness survival. Shout out to Terry, huge birding fan, and therefore I know so much about birds and plants because my dad is a botanist. Nature is my absolute home. Fun fact about me, I I pretty much can't get lost walking through woods. I just don't get lost. Put me down like 3 blocks of a city, I'm instantly lost. I have no idea where I am or where I went because it all looks the same to me. But
That's great considering where you live.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't go well sometimes. If I don't know where the lake is, I go, guess it's gonna be 3 hours till I get home. But yeah, I'm a ranger. I wish I was a bard, but alas.
I guess along that thought process, similarly, I'd probably say that I am an artificer because of the whole engineer thing. But I think I would rather be a druid.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That tracks. Kelly, Eva, either of you have thoughts?
You could say NPC.
I am a human NPC.
Probably a fighter. That is what I was thinking for you, given the collection of swords that you own.
Yeah.
I would love the acrobatic abilities of Monk in real life, but yeah,
Sure.
probably fighter.
Makes sense.
I think if there's
Yeah, I
anyone
think
in
I-
this group that could beat up any other member of this group,
Yeah.
it would be you. So
Yes.
I think fighter tracks.
Maybe I would want to be a fighter, but I'd be such a bad fighter. I'd be like, no, I've got this, and then absolutely have my ass kicked.
I could train you in real life.
Yes. I'll be your protege.
Kelly.
I don't know. I guess if we're going off of like, I don't even know. I would say I am either like a life domain cleric because I like to take care of people and like make sure people are okay, or a wizard because I enjoy learning things. But I think I would also like to be a druid. I think that sounds cool. Nature's neat, and it would be cool to be magical with nature.
If you're out there and you've never seen the YouTube video, Nature's Neat.
I don't know if that's what
recommend
it's called. but
I don't remember what it's called. It's very funny.
Should we go nature?
Nature.
Nature's Neat. That's how they say it in the video. It's very funny.
What about
Anyway,
you, Ben? You
what
weren't
about
asked the
me?
question, but I'll open it up for you.
so I feel like if you take the I feel like the idea of like bard is very appealing to me, but like not so much in the singing songs thing. Like I can sing. I have like some musical training and knowledge and skills and stuff, but I'm not like the best singer in the world or the best instrumental player in the world. But in terms of like bard's storytelling stuff, storytelling is always something I have gravitated to, whether that is coming up with elaborate imaginary tales as a kid, or being a DM. There's a reason that I like DMing so much. There's a reason why in the vast majority of D&D games I play, I am the DM. And that's also the same reason that I am drawn to history. For those of you who don't know, I have a degree in history as well, just like Kelly. So I think for all those reasons, because I'm so drawn to storytelling, I think Bard is what fits me the best.
Be a lore bard.
That's well, yeah. If I
Lore
were
bards are the
if
best.
I were to pick a subclass, it would probably be lore bard because I think in terms of like, again, like the music aspect, take it or leave it. But the storytelling aspect is sort of the aspect of bard that I think fits me best. And I also just don't know how to shut the fuck up most of the time. So bard
As
also
evidenced
fits well
by this.
in that aspect. So.
I think that's new news to everybody here and everybody who's watching.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's why we come back each week.
Yes.
Oh shucks.
Great. Lore bard. There, I'll be College of Swords bard.
There you go.
And then Jannar can train me.
There we go.
We'll go ahead and follow that up with another Zuzu question. Who sent us many questions. This one's a little bit more of a fun-based question. What is your character's zodiac and sun and moon signs?
Yes.
All right, going to the internet.
So Octavia, her sun sign, she's a Virgo.
Okay.
Mhm. Aquarius rising.
Mm.
I think that's what it feels right.
Okay.
I don't know what sun and moon mean.
It's just
I'm just gonna throw
don't
that out there.
Really either. I
I'm sorry to everyone.
I'm not super invested in zodiac stuff. I have been shown my full zodiac chart.
such a Leo thing to say.
Right. Yeah, there it is. But it's not something that I am particularly invested in as a person. Zuzu says that Penny is canonically a Scorpio with a Cancer moon and a Taurus rising.
All right.
Excellent.
So
I also do not know enough about zodiac stuff, but I feel like Nyx is a Sagittarius. Just based on what I've read about Sagittariuses.
That fits.
sure.
But also, I could have picked any one of them. I feel like any one of them would have fit, but that's fine.
Sure. I believe Artemis is an Aries. You got Aries energy.
Sure.
I think Janara is a Leo because I think she's chaotic like a fire sign, but more calm. Calm chaos.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Is there another Zuzu?
I can ask us another Zuzu
Yeah.
question.
Next Zuzu.
Let's go with. I think this is the last for everyone one, and then she has a few that are for specific people. But the last for everyone one first from Zuzu is if you could go back and change one choice you made while playing, what would it be? What is Matt?
I want so badly to release the troll. I almost did it.
I know.
Oh.
I wanted
You
so
really
badly to
wanted to
release the
fight
troll.
that troll.
Oh, I wanted
You really
so
wanted
much.
to. I know.
But then, innocent people in the building.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my thing. Maybe we'll find him again later. We'll find a troll later.
Probably.
I feel like I would have tried to have Bowman get captured because I feel like we may have been able to save more people if we figured out where he was going to go. And I feel like Janara sort of feels like she has some of their blood on her hands because there was a way that we could have potentially saved some of them. I think getting that list with the X's when we were down there, I think really did something to Janara.
Sure.
That whole scenario was pretty fucked up. I'm sorry for thinking of it, but also very fucked up guy. So
Good story.
no, that's fair. Thank you.
I kind of wish Nyx had quit Bloodkeith in a more like storming out of an office, like making a big deal, making a scene type of way to prove a point. But
Set it on fire.
she also was kind of like, this place is going down and I don't need to be inside during it. So
Sure. What about Octavia? Any choices you'd make different?
I can't think of anything
Sure.
that I would change exactly. Like, I haven't loved everything she's done, but nothing specifically that I would go back and do differently at this point.
Sure.
Maybe yours is coming up, seeing as your mom's
Yeah.
poking around.
Great. Someone
we
else
wanna-
has a question, we can do that.
I have one kind of like general campaign question for Ben.
Okay.
So this is a very different style of campaign just due to the fact of like how the world is during this. Is it, you've kind of already answered this, but like, is it giving you the same satisfaction of like the high fantasy type
Sure.
adventuring? And I guess the same to the rest of you that have played those types of adventures in the past too.
I am this campaign has been very fulfilling to me. I have really loved DMing this game. I've really loved playing this game with all of you. I really like building and fleshing out cities in D&D. In the homebrew campaign that Kelly and Kira are in, the capital city of the nation they have spent the most time in is way more fleshed out than it will ever need to be for any purpose, just because I really enjoy that. So designing an urban campaign was very appealing to me. And I think the other thing too is I have tried running travel-based campaigns and wilderness-based campaigns and so on and so forth. And I have a hard time making it fun for me at that point. And so it's like you end up glossing over a lot of those travel sections to get to the part that's like more interesting. But then at that point, like, well, then is there a reason why all these places can't just be
by each other?
You know what I mean? So I think the idea of running an urban campaign has been appealing to me for a really long time. And also this time period is a time period historically that I am very, very interested in, that I find very interesting to study. So there are certainly things about a medieval high fantasy setting that I really like, and that in some ways I miss, but no, by and large, I really like this sort of industrial age urban fantasy setting. Because also most of the time when I homebrew stuff, I work in some little elements of the technology being more advanced than it typically would be because magic exists. And so taking that to a logical extreme where just, hey, an industrial revolution has happened, but this is also a world of magic, is really fun for me. I really have enjoyed doing it. I think, honestly, I think this is a little bit more fulfilling to me than a standard medieval running a standard medieval high fantasy campaign would be.
That's fun.
Cool. What about the rest of you though? Like, how do you feel about the difference in not traveling as much?
I definitely like, I don't know if I like more one than the more, I like one more than the other. But I do definitely enjoy this Industrial Revolution era, like late Industrial Revolution era setting, because I know a lot about it in general. And so I can be like, cool, what were people actually doing at this time? Like, how can I fit that in? And because there's more, like slightly more modern technology, like there's indoor plumbing in some places and lights and that kind of stuff. It just, I don't know. It's slightly easier to like get my mind in the correct time period because it's not as long ago.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat of I don't particularly prefer one over the other. I do like exploring like a vast world and the history and maybe different cultures that might be in it and seeing how they all weave together of like a larger map world, but sitting down and focusing on one area, like this is the first time I've been in a game that really delves into one specific place and what's going on there, and that's really interesting and cool. It also, this campaign reminds me at times, there are just moments where I'm reminded of the TV show Firefly, of
That is very high praise.
yeah, of this weird, there's magic plus everybody's shooting revolvers at each other, of just like, some people have a lot of great technology and magic, other people have literally nothing. Have them clash against each other in this really contained, interesting space that has been really fun.
And for the record, it is something that too, I mean, Waterdeep exists in the broader context of the Sword Coast and the Sword Coast Federation, which,
Right.
you know, but I mean, I've really enjoyed going deep on all that stuff. Anyway, Eva,
It's
sorry,
like Spider-Man.
It is kind of like Spider-Man,
Like,
yeah. Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man just does New York. He
Yes.
doesn't really do anywhere else. He just does New York. The other Avengers are off doing other stuff. But Spider-Man is focusing on New York City.
I really like both, but I do really enjoy having a character that's so invested in this one place too, because I do feel like particularly connected to this world that we've been building.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy both. I don't necessarily like the travel scenes as much as some other things too, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good question. I mean, they've all been good questions.
That one was a particularly
That one was
good question.
Particularly good question.
Thank you.
Ben, here's a bad question for you.
Great.
I said earlier the last adventure was one shot.
Yes.
That we did.
Yes.
In general, care to reflect? Is there anything that we did or didn't do that basically what secrets did we miss? Because unless it matters, I think you can tell us.
No. So
what secrets did we miss, or was there anything that we particularly threw you for a loop on? If you remember, because it was a long time ago.
Yeah, thinking back, things. So for one thing was, of course, travel from town to the location. You basically just skipped over any difficulty with that travel because
So we could all fly.
You all were, and because you had access to spells that allowed you to just basically know exactly where you were going and how to get there. So
yeah, didn't I activate like Find Path?
I think
or
you
something?
activate. I think you cast Find the Path. So there was no skit there. I mean, I had an idea for like what a skill challenge would be to like make it through the weather to get there and not get lost and stuff. But with Find the Path active, that skill challenge is basically out the window. So yeah, that was one thing. In terms of missing anything actually like in the temple, there, I mean, potentially if you had sat down and like tried to have a longer conversation with the fallen angel, Kazriel, and I don't think he necessarily left a lot of room for an extended conversation, but there could have theoretically been a scenario where you had talked him around and like learned more of the backstory that I developed for like how that whole thing with the town went down, which was basically that Kazriel was a celestial that happened to be passing, like many years ago. He was a celestial that happened to be passing through this area, and he helped out this town, and the town began worshiping him kind of as a god for helping them, and he decided he kind of liked that, and that ended up corrupting him over time, and he forced the town to build him this huge temple. And it, at a certain point, it turned where the villagers of the town realized that this guy that they had started worshiping was actually a huge asshole and was exploiting them and being mean to them and stuff. And they tried to flee, and he was having none of that, and killed several of them and resurrected their corpses. And the gods sort of seeing how far this once mighty angel of Mount Celestia had fallen, buried the town in an avalanche hundreds of years ago. And then in the ages since then, because of the Industrial Revolution and rising temperatures on the planet as a result, some of that snow was melting and it uncovered the town. And then Kazriel had been sort of in stasis since then. He'd been, after getting buried, he didn't die, but he sort of like fell into a deep slumber. And then when the last adventurers stumbled upon those ruins, their presence, particularly because Sam's character, Zur, was a celestial warlock, the celestial connection he had woke up Kazriel.
Way to go, Sam.
So that, I mean, I don't know what path you could have had to get to that history. There was maybe a path to it, but I think that was kind of like the main thing that didn't get covered in the one shot was the details about that particular history. And then, yeah, I mean, I guess the only other thing was he had sent out many undead out into the world to, attack places and bring back more victims and that sort of thing. And the ritual that he was trying to perform on Janara's father was a ritual he had developed himself. It's not something that exists in game as is. It was a unique magical ritual that I had developed that would have raised Janara's dad, if the time had been allowed to pass. It would have raised him as an undead. It would have raised him as a deathlock.
Cute.
So there was that as well. But yeah, I mean, all of that history and backstory was kind of just the only real thing. I mean, I sort of designed a very limited in scope because it's very easy. I've done one shots before that have ended up being 2 or 3 shots. And so I was really trying to force myself to be like, no, like one session, you have to keep it brief. And it still ended up being a long session, but I very intentionally tried to keep the focus extremely limited for time. So,
well, it was fun.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good.
This doesn't have to do with anybody's question, but I did just remember that in the first like one-shot break that we did, where we did like the high fantasy version of our characters.
Which that one shot, we did record a one shot with that, which ended up being a 2-shot. It hasn't gone up on the
Oh
channel.
yeah, shoot. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
You don't
never
know.
mind.
You
Hasn't
can.
gone up.
It's fine. It hasn't gone up on the channel. It was sort of a backup thing. If there was ever a gap that we needed to fill, maybe I'll put it out during this time.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
It was fun. It was fun to play and kind
It
of
was.
flesh
Yeah.
out.
yeah.
Nyx is a whole lot like less short with people, which is no pun intended, but
Sure.
she's a little bit more accepting of Artemis in that one, and like I don't know, just high fantasy Nyx is a little more understanding, I guess. And I just remembered that.
Right.
Any others? Another Zuzu?
Yeah, we can ask another
Yeah.
Zuzu. This one is
Knock
for
him out the
Kira.
Ah,
Do you think Octavia encountering her maybe mom and the news Jacinda shared with her will fundamentally change the relationship she has with her father? And
yes.
do you think this will have long-term consequences for them?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Next question. Yes.
Yes.
Great.
And yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll elaborate, but yes.
No, yeah. That's totally fair. That's totally fair. Well, that one
We
was
cut
very-
to Octavia just casting spells
Yeah.
again, pissed
Yeah.
off as
Yeah.
hell.
Great. We'll go on to another Penny
What's her name?
Zuzu question.
Zuzu Preswell.
Zuzu Presswell. Yeah, another Zuzu question for Matt and Eva. What made you want to multi-class as warlocks? And how do you imagine this may change your character and their dynamic in the group?
You want to go first, Eva?
Sure. I sort of summarized it earlier that I don't want Jannar to already have like a magical ability. I only wanted it to be, presented in this way. And I don't even know if Jannar is going to use it all that often, but I'm certainly going to try to grab all the healing stuff I possibly can when I get it.
For the record, in case it wasn't clear to the audience already, Janara's Warlock's subclass is Pact of the Celestial, so they get some good healing stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure it will affect the group, but I haven't even really gotten to explore it too
Yeah.
much. So I'm not even really all that sure. Yeah, I'm still sort of making decisions myself.
Like I said earlier, Artemis, a lot of this stuff I've planned out and had these options available for a long time. Like the references to Artemis's fencing ability from way back in the day. And now he was just given the sword by this patron. Like there are little hints. There's another, yeah, we'll just go ahead and the Midwinter Ball outfit is a bit of a reference because I'm going to be using the spell Armor of Agathis a bunch, which is ice on your actual kind of an ice armor on your person. And so I've kind of taken that, and I might some of the like there's a cantrip like green flame blade I'm going to be taking, and I'm twisting it to be blue fire because that's his thing. There's a couple little customizing tweaks. Armor of Agathis might actually be called something else. I haven't decided. I might just forget also. And so it's going to be this shift, like I said before, of being able to be a frontline fighter if people need it. If folks are going down and they need a big old flashy distraction, Artemis can all for Artemis with the armor on, wielding the sword, Misty Step to get quickly in. I've spent way too much time picking out, okay, every single round he can action do this, bonus action do this, and just be this optimizing force of whatever is needed on the battle. He can try and fill that role of just being more active. And like we've already seen, he's can be a tad reckless sometimes. And probably there's going to be a couple instances of him continuing to be reckless and thinking, okay, this is my time, I have to go do this, and he's going to mess up. He's going to get way in over his head and have to learn because, again, he's such a stupid rich boy. He doesn't know the world. So there'll be a couple of those interesting moments that I'm sure Penny will love.
Definitely.
Unless anybody else has a question, I have a question. What has been do you have, this is for everyone, do you have a favorite combat encounter so far? And what is it? And or do you have a favorite social encounter so far? And what is it? Or social event? It doesn't necessarily have to have been like one singular interaction with one singular NPC, but
it's no secret that I love when a baddie messes us up or does something cool. I say it every single time of, oh my gosh, I love them. There is nothing more satisfying for me than us going in to kill a monster and that monster goes, nah, fuck you, and just hits us, smacks us in the face with something, and we have to adapt to it. This last fight we did against Octavia's mom was fun. It was unexpected. It jumped at us after we were halfway tapped already. Had to adapt with what's going on. There was no way to plan for it, right? To follow any sort of plan. And in the moment, us looking at our character sheets and going, oh my gosh, what can I do? What can I do? Oh, that idea I had already isn't relevant because that person just died. So we got to try and save them. Just scrambling in the chaos. That was just really fun. Real good scuffle.
Yeah, I think I agree. That's probably my favorite so far. And then the I guess social encounter. I really enjoyed trying to convince the group to make the deal with the devil, even though it didn't work. I was totally in for it.
Yeah.
I thought that was fun though.
I also really enjoyed just the debate around the devil, and seeing who decided that their character would be interested in this, and who was like, no, we're good. And I really liked the fight with the manticore. That was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, the Manticore fight was my favorite one too. I just thought it was a lot of fun. I liked the ball. I thought the ball was a lot of fun to just see what everyone would do at that type of event. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
I also agree. I did enjoy the Nyx Octavia bonding experience.
So good.
Don't steal things. I'm gonna steal things.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do about that?
Not much.
How about you, Matt? Favorite social event or encounter?
I mean, the ball was fun. I think it's a lot of very small moments. Calling up, and it was a moment of me intentionally throwing you for a loop and saying, yeah, I got a young boy to drive the carriage. Deal with it, DM. What's his name? Everything around little Danny boy was so much fun. Any opportunity I get to find that guy again, I'm throwing him in.
Of course, of course.
Just little fun moments of levity, like that. The ball was just filled with them, like the next Octavia interaction of moments where we can be like, oh yeah, we're trying to be heroes in a very spiraling out of control city, but then we all are we're still laughing and buddying, cracking jokes. Yeah.
Nice.
The ball was fun.
Yeah.
Ori, what was your favorite? There's
He
a cat on
liked
the screen. For
opening the
podcast
door.
people.
He liked opening the door and all of us laughing and Ben thinking it was about him, but it really wasn't. It was Ori opening.
That
the
was
door.
a deleted scene.
Yeah, then I
first.
had to like edit it out because I had to
So
start
sorry.
over what I was saying. No, it's perfectly fine. It was very funny. Ori's a little.
It's always all about Ori.
Yeah, he thinks this is his show.
I mean,
Definitely.
it might as well be.
Dungeons and Ori.
Ben, what was your favorite one to either write or just,
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of social encounters, I think I have 3 favorite ones that I've run. The Midwinter Ball was definitely one of them. I really, really liked putting that together. I really liked what y'all did with it while you were there. I've got a couple of particular favorite standout moments from the ball. Nyx and Octavia's conversation was hilarious. Artemis's decision to play Cormyrean music at the ball, I really liked that.
Since he's not here, it was a test for Bowman. It was a test to see if Bowman would come in, if Artemis could actually trust him, because it'd be like, Bowman will recognize it if he knows this.
I really liked Penny and Artemis's interaction during the ball. I really loved the way Janara handled the whole situation with the Open Lord asking for her parents' endorsement. I actually think there was a lot of good Artemis and Janara stuff during the ball as well. With the dancing a couple times and chatting and all that stuff. I think there was I really liked a lot of the fun stuff at the ball. So that was a really good social encounter. I loved throwing the deal with the devil at you all. That is, in my opinion, the best use I've ever had for a devil. And I say this as somebody who in the other campaign, the main antagonists right now are a devil cult. I loved that conversation with Mordai because I think what worked so well about it is because people did want the deal, did want to make the deal. And I love putting that temptation in front of you. I think that's one of my prouder moments was developing that encounter, that social encounter. And then another one of my favorites from very early on was the first meeting of Goldilocks Wilmington.
Yeah.
Oh God. Nightmare. I was terrified.
I loved running that whole encounter. I loved the way Bowman responded to that. I think the way Artemis responded to that was also really, really good. It was about what I was expecting from Artemis. But I had no clue how Bowman was going to react to that whole situation. And so I really enjoyed the way Sam played that. And I've really enjoyed the fact that the Bowman has shown a vested interest in her well-being and her growth since then. I think that's really fun for me. And a part of what I liked about that too, because Goldilocks is a character that Matt, you had come up with in your backstory and handed to me. And one of the things I really like doing with backstory characters that are handed to me is, where appropriate, how do I flesh this out a little bit more? And so taking this one night stand character and actually developing her to she has a pretty miserable life with her parents. I think worked well, not only in terms of just the dramatic angle of it, but also in terms of making Artemis question some things about himself, which I think was an important first step on Artemis's the character arc Artemis has been going on thus far. So those are some of my favorite social encounters to run. My favorite combat encounters to run I think the first Watchful Order combat encounter was a lot of fun for me to run. You all did handle it very, very well, but that was very fun for me to run because that was all homebrew. The Watchful Order agent is something that I homebrewed basically from scratch. I mean, I follow, I watch a lot of D&D advice videos in my free time because, hey, yeah, of course I do. And so for design philosophy, I used a video by Matt Colville. For those of you who watch D&D advice channels, I cannot recommend Matt Colville enough. He did a video called Action-Oriented Monsters. And a lot of the design philosophy in that video is what I was striving to get when I first designed the original Watchful Order agent, which turned out pretty well. Definitely, like, if I could go back and tweak it, there was probably a couple tweaks that I would make, but I think it turned out really well. And that was sort of, I've done a lot of little homebrew things here and there. I've continued to do a lot of little homebrew things here and there, where such as adjusting HP or AC or damage output or that sort of thing. But that was sort of the first basically from scratch homebrew I had done, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. So that's one of my favorites. I really liked the fight with the Watchful Order when you left Marvel's Manor. I took that same Watchful Order agent and scaled it down for the two that were accompanying Octavia's mom. And then Octavia's mom was mostly homebrewed, but with elements pulled from creatures that exist in the game already. And so that was really fun to do as well. And then if I had to pick a third favorite combat encounter, probably the Manticore fight. I think those would be my three favorite combat encounters.
Could have been the troll.
Could have been the troll.
Could have been the troll.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Unless we get some sort of like time hop thing that like we get sent back in time, but
You start working on that, Octavia.
For Kelly from Zuzu,
Oh boy.
does Nyx have a person in her life that influenced her into being an activist? Or was it always something she was passionate about and explored on her own?
No, she didn't really have anybody that she was like nobody that she was like, oh, I want to be like this person. But she through her different like jobs that she's had at various factories, she got involved with the EPA, just started going to meetings every now and then started to notice that it didn't just affect like her and her family. It was something that was impacting everybody, and started getting more involved and planning stuff. She's still not like super high up in the organization, but in the Waterdeep like chapter, she's kind of mid-level, where she knows the important people, but she's not one of the important people. But yeah, her parents are very hesitant about her being part of the EPA. One of her sisters is like a casual member, but her family didn't try to get her into this or anything like that. Nyx also doesn't have a whole lot of friends, so she just kind of decided that this was something that she cared about and decided to go for it.
Yeah.
Throw her all into it.
Great. Anybody else have a question they want to ask? I can keep going. I've got a couple more. that I have, but
Oh my gosh, let's keep going. Are
Yeah,
they more
going.
Zuzu questions?
I've got one more Zuzu question. There was one for Sam, but he's not here tonight either. So that
Another Terry talk.
was there another Terry talk question?
We've hit a lot of the Terry talks. There was one for Sam. Let's see.
Sam,
Maybe if we hit another moment where we get to do this again, we'll have another round of
Yeah.
Terry talks, and I won't share them as readily with the group so that
Okay.
we talk about them all independently. We'll save
Okay.
them for
Okay.
shareable
Yeah.
moments.
No, for sure. for
I will
sure.
say that Sam's character is probably the one that I have the most, like, just the one that I don't know anything about. Like, I can kind of piece together some stuff for everybody else, but Sam's, like, Bowman is still very mysterious,
Yeah.
which is cool. I like it.
Mm.
And he and I have talked pretty extensively, sorry to the rest of you, about stuff involved in his backstory and stuff that he may want to do, but he's not sure when's the right time for Bowman. So all of that is sort of, at this point, I'm fully allowing him to dictate when Bowman sort of engages in certain aspects of that, you know.
Then we'll never know.
Well, you know, there you go. There may be opportunities where I will throw something at him, but something hasn't really come up. And right now, it's sort of I feel like we're in a part of the campaign where it makes sense to go with where Bowman wants to go with it. And maybe in the future, forcing him into something, into a situation that he then has to respond to. That may come up, that may be appropriate a little bit down the line, but well, I have a question then. Do people have a favorite NPC and who is it?
NPC. I mean, other than Herb Davis, obviously.
You
I don't know,
Sugar Daddy
Rose.
Herb
You
Davis?
mean the little boy who drove the carriage is not your favorite?
Well, that's true. Danny Boy might actually be my actual answer.
Uh-huh.
I was sitting here, Vinny, because I hate him so much.
Sure.
I detest Vinny.
I really
but-
like Rose, like Goldilocks Rose. I think that she's had cool character development since we first met her.
Yeah. Goldilocks is fun because her original idea that I sent Ben is like a girl who just got out of the house one day, was covered in like ribbons and frills, and has like 60 million cats. And to see that she has become this relatively kick-ass and continuing to get more kick-ass person has been really fun.
Yeah.
Brian.
He's been
We should
very
check
fun.
in on Brian.
Yeah, we should check on Brian.
Eva, did you have a favorite or?
I really like Sanctuary. I don't feel like I've really communicated with him as much as I expected to, but I feel like in my head I have this whole backstory with Sanctuary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I would like to maybe communicate with him a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, with the warlock pact that you made being directly facilitated by him, that is definitely potential for their development of that relationship too. One from Zuzu to me that I think
Do you want me to read it to you?
I can read it to
Okay.
myself. That I think I kind of at least hinted at the answer to, but is have you all done anything during the campaign that really surprised me?
Yes.
Anything that I didn't expect? So in terms of big stuff, again, you've mostly kind of gone where I was expecting you to go. which is good for my sanity in many cases. Anything that like really surprised me, maybe just yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that like was super duper surprising.
So I guess can we change the question a little bit
Yeah.
instead of like a thing that happened? Our characters themselves, is there anything about them that you like? We discussed a lot like individually with you how the characters were going to be, but is there anything about them that you were just like, oh, like they took that in a different direction than I was expecting?
Sure. Yeah, I think Janara has had a little bit more of an earnestness to her desire to help the city than I was expecting when Eva and I originally sat down and talked about the character. I definitely think that's one big example I have. Bowman has kind of behaved in a way I more or less on track with what Sam and I had talked about before. So nothing Bowman's done has been remarkably surprising aside from Sam's desire to do interesting and make interesting and creative choices in the moment in terms of like what actions he takes in an encounter.
He's the king of improvised weapons.
Yeah,
actions.
yeah. And I think that's great. But in terms of like overall, nothing in particular jumps out at me there. I think that yeah, I don't know. Most of your characters, I feel like I had a pretty good idea of who they were. And as I've thrown difficult things at each of you, and as I will continue to throw difficult things at each of you as those encounters come up, I will see if how y'all react, and maybe there will be circumstances that like really shock me or surprise me. But thus far, most of your characters have behaved. I will say Penny actually caving and asking Janara for that last little bit of money also did surprise me a little bit. Given how stubborn she had been up to that point with asking for help. I was a little surprised she actually caved and asked Janara for that last little bit.
If I could go back and change one thing, I would actually tell her the original money was from me, because I think I like flubbed and said it was from Joyce or something stupid like that.
Remember when Nyx tried to put it in Penny's
Yep.
shoe while she was wearing it?
Yep. And with the roll.
That's when I am like, oh, I can like it doesn't matter what I roll. I have such a high. Oh, just kidding. I rolled a 2, so no bonus that I have is going to make a difference.
That's how I feel now with any like persuasion or deception check. I'm like, oh yeah, I can get anything done. I look down at the dice and I go, uh-oh.
What?
That plus 10 is not happening today.
One thing, this doesn't really go along with a question, but I guess it is kind of something just inherent with Dungeons and Dragons. Speaking of dice rolls, is I was very surprised that the dice dictated who knew about Janara's parents and who didn't, and it fell along class lines. Like I thought that was so interesting.
That was a piece of dice magic and perfection that I
love when dice tell the story.
I loved that so much. I love that so much because of course I had in my head, right, that yeah, Last Adventurers would probably be more famous among wealthy people than among poor people. But like I couldn't have dreamed that the dice would have worked out so perfectly to tell that exact detail I had in my head.
Wasn't it also all the rich people got the sewer disease?
Yes.
Yes, all the rich people got the sewer disease and all the poor people didn't.
That
Yeah.
was another like
So good.
perfect dice.
Yeah, that was another really perfect dice moment. I was like, oh, just mwah. Chef's kiss.
Thank you,
Just
dice
so good.
gods.
Thank you, dice gods. Unless anybody else has a question, I only have one more and then we can bring us to an end. But if anybody else has a question they want to ask, now is the time. Give you a second to find a last
Yeah.
question if you it's like Matt is looking at his
I know.
list.
No, we've done so much. No. I think that's it.
Okay. So my last question then is looking towards the future of this campaign. What is one thing you as a player either would like to do or are looking forward to as we continue forward?
There's
Go for it.
someone else. Okay. There's a piece of me that is curious if when our identities get revealed,
Mm.
what will
I was-
happen?
I was thinking about that today
Uh-huh.
because of the police chase, and like that's the closest that we have come to like actually being involved with law enforcement at the scene of the crime. And
Yeah.
so
The police chase. Technically, Octavia's mother now knows
right.
that Octavia was involved in this. Whether that would go anywhere, I don't think she's gonna be like knocking on like the mayor's door. Like the connections that we're starting to make, eventually somebody's gonna put two and two together and be like, hey, you're Batman, aren't you?
Right.
That I'm looking forward to when that happens. And how we all deal with it. Because I think I have an idea how Artemis deals with it, but I don't think
Well, Clark-
people would agree with it or what?
Well, you know, Octavia works at the newspaper. She's got a whole Clark Kent thing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. And Spider-Man, because you're also a photojournalist.
So Penny's Clark and Octavia's
Yes.
Peter.
Peter Parker, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be cool to explore like outside the city maybe a little bit, but there's a lot going on before we can get to that. So like we'll see
So,
what happens.
As a quick
If we
sidebar,
survive.
yeah, as a quick sidebar, I have been open with several of you, but maybe not all of you in one sitting, about this. If we do a season 2 of Gilded City, I would love to take it outside of Waterdeep.
Mhm.
That'd be fun.
For sure, but
I don't think Janara would leave the city. I think I might have to like make a different character.
yeah,
That'd be fun.
I
Sad.
just don't. I just
fun.
can't picture Janara leaving her city.
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense. But that is potentially a little bit further down the line. So we'll see where we're at when we get there. But yeah, it would be cool. Even if it's a brief like vacation outside of the city. that
Yeah.
would be fun
Beach.
too. Yeah.
Beach day.
I'd probably be down for
Yeah.
At the beach episode.
a leave, but I mean like a permanent.
No, for a long period of time,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
No, certainly. Yeah. Janara has priorities. So
I think I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Janara trying to figure out the actual political situation of the city. Because if she's important enough to back a candidate, I think she would maybe throw down her hand in running against some of these corrupt individuals. But I don't know. I've played around with the idea.
be cool.
Wow, that'd be
Nix
fun.
would vote for her if she could vote.
Ooh.
Certainly be down for everyone to be able to vote.
I think I think like right now, I think I'm the most interested in just seeing where the artificer thing goes, like just see how creative I can be with how I use the different spells and like incorporate them into knickknacks and gadgets.
Nick snacks.
Knickknacks. That's what they're called now.
Yep.
But also I really like, honestly, I kind of like how hesitant almost our group has been to completely come together. I feel like it's a much more like realistic take on how people interact with each other.
Mhm.
At least in my experience, I don't meet five, six other people and just like immediately be like, you're my best friends now, I will tell you all of my secrets. So I'm really enjoying how the group dynamic is kind of playing out, and I'm excited to see where that goes and develop the group more.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see Octavia develop relationships with the rest of the group. Kind of, I feel like she doesn't really, aside from Penny, she hasn't really connected with anyone too much. Like, she told Nyx not to steal stuff, but I don't think that went super well.
No, Nyx thought it was funny. She was like, yeah, okay. I won't do it when you're around. That's fine.
Awesome. Well, great discussion, everyone. Thank you for that. If you stuck around for the whole conversation, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. As I said at the beginning, the next main episode of the Gilded City will be on October 25th. So look forward to that one when we pick up with episode 24. And in the meantime, keep your eye on the channel for other fun stuff we have going on. Pay attention to our social media channels. We will likely be posting updates on what will be going up on the channel in the meantime as we figure and plan that out. But in the meantime, good night, everybody.
Oh,
thank you.
Also, if you have any questions for us, feel free to leave a comment down below, or like tweet us or DM us on Instagram, because we might do another one of these and would love to have more fan questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And let us know if you'd be interested in having another one of these. Certainly we'll at least do another one at the end of the campaign, but maybe we'll do more somewhere in here if folks like it. So, all right, well, have a good night, everybody.